Hey, leaders. In this episode of Building a Culture of Collaboration, we dig into the concept of vulnerability. How can we ensure that vulnerability is present within our culture of collaboration, one where it's not only acceptable, but expected that we can admit when we've made mistakes, when we see something differently from others, when we are leaning upon others for support and moving forward when initiating change. Vulnerability, especially from the perspective of the leader, is so critically important when we are truly deepening our culture of collaboration. We have lots to share with you in this episode, so let's get started.
Intentional and purposeful focus on building a culture of collaboration is the secret for leaders striving to make a difference. In building a culture of collaboration, Kurtis and Lorna will share simple tips, ideas, and strategies to take your organization's collaborative efforts to the next level.
We hope that you've had a fantastic week, and we are really excited to join you once again this week. The idea came up, and it's not a new idea. It's something that we've talked many, many times before, but it's that idea of vulnerability and how critical it is to a collaborative process and to overall collaboration within an organization. So we talk about collaborative response and its foundational components and how you put this in place within the school, but there's nuances within that we have to attend to. And one of those is creating through the structures and processes that sense of vulnerability and the acceptance that not only is it necessary for deeper levels of collaboration, that it actually becomes very integral to what it is that we do within our organization. So describe when somebody says to you vulnerability, what does that mean?
So when I first think about this, I think that it's one of the components that we work toward in building a culture of collaboration. And it is one of the elements that we really need to attend to. So when we think about how do we create that vulnerability,
that space where I can be vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I won't say it doesn't just happen.
No.
That it doesn't happen by accident, or it doesn't happen just because we say we are going to be vulnerable, but we need to be intentional with some of the things that we're doing to create that openness and that element of trust.
Well, and I think this is one of the fallacies that we fall victim to, is that in order to be vulnerable, we have to have a close personal connection. We have to have a relationship first in order for that to happen. And I don't necessarily think, of course that can help, but I don't think it's entirely necessary if we've become comfortable and supportive or trusting the processes that we have in place, that I can be vulnerable. I can share this out. And we've established norms that say it's not only okay, but it's expected.
Yeah.
And so you create that safe space through things like norms and other components. It doesn't mean that you and I have to know one another's biggest secrets or have connections outside of our roles within the organization as well.
Well, one of the things that we do as part of a process within the collaborative team meetings is a component around celebrations. And I think that this piece is really important, not only to the collaborative team meeting, but to every time any group of team, like any kind of team, is meeting and thinking carefully about how do we celebrate what we're doing? How do we identify the successes that we're having, whether that's with students, whether that's with staff, but really creating that environment that we come together and we celebrate each other, and we recognize that there are wonderful things that are happening across our building. I think that's one step that is a possibility that will lead to that trust. I think on the opposite side of that is as a leader, demonstrating vulnerability
Yes,
And
modeling it.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and when you don't know something, and we talk about this in classrooms too, as a teacher, tell your kids that you don't know the answer to that and that you are
Let's
going to
explore it
find that
together.
out.
Yeah,
So
or even better, let's explore it together. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's figure that out.
Yeah, so I think as a leader, just making sure that people know you don't know all the answers.
Right.
You don't know how you're going to get to your end goal, but we're going to work through that together.
Yeah, we'll figure that out through the learning. And I think modeling that becomes really, really important. I think also having intentional focus on vulnerability. I'm thinking of a divisional group I was with just yesterday, where one of their norms on their leadership days, there is direct, explicit mention of vulnerability, that we will be willing to be vulnerable and keep an open mind when sharing one amongst our colleagues. And then yesterday, we even said, today, let's practice that component of this norm. And we said at the end, we would love to be able to share instances where you noticed vulnerability happening within the room. And for one individual, they shared, I'd like to praise this person because when they came into a conversation and said this, it really was demonstrating that norm, which again is reinforcing, building upon. And now not only does that person feel that much safer, but everyone else within the room is able to say, okay, that was actually not only acceptable that he stepped into that zone, but it got celebrated here as well.
Too, we need to think about.
We'll be right back to continue this episode. Have you ever walked out of a meeting and felt that nothing was accomplished? Have you ever sat during a team meeting creating your grocery list for the end of the day? Have you ever felt like the staff of the hit TV show The Office when Michael calls everyone to the conference room? Our most valuable resource is time. When you are tasked with leading any type of a meeting, your first question should be, how do I use this time effectively for myself and for my team? This requires planning. No longer can we call over the PA, everyone meet in the staff room, we have some things to discuss. Instead, we need to invest some time in planning the meeting agenda and how we engage with our team to produce the results we are hoping to achieve. Access the free guide, 5 planning considerations to transform your team meetings, and you'll receive valuable tips to ensure your team meeting time is effective, productive, and engaging. Go to bit.ly/5 planning teams. That's number 5 planning teams, all one word. Access the guide and never again will you hear this meeting could have just been an email. And now back to our conversation.
It's a bit of a buzzword right now.
Yeah.
Both in business and in education. And we can name that as one of our norms, but being able to take time to really think about, what does it actually mean? And what does it look like?
Yeah.
And so really playing that out either in the focus on one norm at a time, like we would recommend, but also to take the time to just, maybe that's a leadership activity that you engage in about, what does that word mean? And what does it mean to you? And what does it look like? And really playing that out.
Well, and I think this is one of the intentional designs within the collaborative team meeting structure, is that when I'm able to say I have this student and my key issue is, what I'm really communicating is, I'm not sure what to do when I've identified that as a key issue. But rather than me saying, and here's everything that I've done, all the things to try and justify, or feeling overwhelmed when people start saying, you should do this, you should do this, we intentionally say, let's add other students to that, which helps to reinforce that, this is not just me. When I say this is a student with a key issue, which again is really saying, this is something I'm not sure what to do. When other people say, yep, you can add this student and this student, essentially what we're saying is, me too.
Yeah.
With that. And again, you're reinforcing and making it okay that I don't have to have all the answers. It goes back to that key understanding in collaborative team meetings, but then particularly in collaborative response overall, the idea that every one of our individuals are experts and learners. And the way we get to really deep learning is when we're able to say, I don't know how to do that.
And we're going to build this together. We're going to work through this together, and we're going to help each other through this and focus on what is our end goal and how do we get there. But we do that together, not depending on any one person being the expert in the room.
So I think this does connect back to that concept of psychological safety that Amy Edmondson talks about, that you can't have really deep levels of collaboration and effectiveness without psychological safety. And I would suggest I can't achieve psychological safety if it's not a space where I feel I can be vulnerable and expose the parts of my practice that I haven't completely figured out and potentially will never completely figure out.
Which then leads to that high level of trust that you have with the team, where you can bring up, you can identify your struggles, and you can identify the challenges that you're facing, and that you're not going to be faced with criticism, but you're going to be faced with, okay, so how do we move that forward? How do we help you? How do we work through that key issue that you're having with a student? How do we come up with lots of ideas that can support you in that work?
Absolutely. So for those that have had a chance to view or engage in this conversation, we'd love for you to share out what are some ways that you reinforce vulnerability within your teams, across your organization. Love to hear different perspectives that people have. We're consistently learning how to be able to do this, not only in our own organization, but then in working with others. So would love to hear your insights. We wish you all the best as we move forward and look forward to the next chance we connect. Take care.
See you soon.
Jigsaw Learning, founded by Kurtis and Lorna Hewson, is a team of educators who work with schools, districts, and educational leaders to establish collaborative response to ensure success for all students. Because every child deserves a team.